Welcome, everybody. What's going on? This is John Hudson with Focus Driven with John Hudson. I am so glad you guys tuned in with me today, starting up season 2 on the podcast. And I got a very special friend with me today, based out of the St. Louis area, but I'll let him give where he was born and raised and if the playground is where he spent most of his days. But today I have the one and only Mr. Dr. Leo Carrara. Just to give you a few insight about him, he's a clinical leader, health educator, and a wellness advocate. He is clinically prepared at a doctorate level and is board certified in the psychiatric care. As an active member on local and national suicide prevention organizations, he collaborates with mental health experts, field professionals, and community leaders to reduce the impact of suicide locally and nationally. His evidence-based suicide prevention trainings has been utilized in crisis intervention training for law enforcement and integrated into best practices trained for behavioral health uh, clinical clinicians. I can't even talk right now, and I should. Dr. Carrara strongly believes in the power of human connection and provides training in mentorship, motivational interviewing, and suicide prevention. He's become a very good friend of mine. I've been knowing him since 2019, but we connected in 2020. Yeah, 2019 is when we first met, but 2020 is when we collaborated on a very special book that he is first co-wrote with me with the Fred Dexter and Friends series. Y'all give it up for my main man, Mr. Leo Carrara. Now, I hope I'm saying his last name right. What's
That
going
was
on,
perfect, John. Hey, John, how are you doing? That was a great introduction. I don't know what else to say.
Hey, I want to let people know that I got some great quality individuals, and not only that, I got a young man who I'm talking to right now that is nationally and locally known. So I want to say thank you so much for being on the podcast with me today. But also too, man, I want to thank you for your service, man. I want to thank you for being the light who you are to those individuals who don't see you when in the famous lights of CBS or NBC or any of these big, huge names. But you have shined your light so brightly that I've recognized you. And I want to say thank you for all you do with helping out with youth and families all across America, my man. So thanks, my friend.
Thanks, John.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, I met you at Johnson County Community College while I was a former counselor. You was doing you was doing a presentation about suicide prevention. And I had to, something inside me said, man, you gotta connect with this guy. This guy knows the stuff. He seems like a really outgoing person. The way your presentation was superb. It was excellent. And since then, I got your information. Man, not only have we partnered together, but you have wrote a book with me, and I'm just elated about it. So we're going to talk about that later. But now I want people to know more about you and about where you're from, what you've been up to, and kind of how you got started into this whole gamut of suicide prevention, counseling, psychiatric care, all that stuff. So kind of give me a synopsis on how you got started in this.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for the fantastic introduction. And I know we're going to talk about the book. It's been a fantastic collaboration. I'm really excited to be a part of it. So a little bit about, you hit all the high notes, but I've been kind of all over the country. I spent a lot of my youth growing up in South Florida in the West Palm Beach area, but also spent quite a bit of time in the Midwest, where I got the chance to meet you. I did my undergraduate at the University of Kansas, and I have a bachelor's in science and nursing from KU. I have my master's in nursing education, and then for my terminal degree, I have a doctorate in nursing practice. Postdoctorate, I have my board certification in psychiatric care.
Wow. Incredible. First of all, I did not know you had that in nursing. So that's a
Wow.
shock. Like I didn't know that. All this time I'm thinking it was either in counseling or a doctorate in psychology, but you're a certified nurse.
Yeah, the doctorate of nursing is analogous to the PhD in nursing or the PhD in a lot of other fields. There's not a lot of nurses, unfortunately, that have terminal degrees. But one of the big things that's happened in the last few years is nursing has really been very strong in moving towards the terminal degrees that are similar to the other professions, the MDs, your physical therapists, your pharmacists, all of those folks, to make sure that we're all, on the same platform, we're all contributing to research, that we're all, part of that same engine that's driving, wellness for individuals.
Hey, that's fantastic. I tell people all the time, when you talk to professional individuals and you hear their journey on how they went through the educational system and got their degrees, for some people it came easy, and then for others it wasn't so easy. So if you can expound a little bit on that, was it more of an easier road or is it more of a difficult road? Because I got young people listening to this podcast, and you never know, they might either want to consider to be a nurse or thought about it. And even for a guy's perspective, a lot of guys, there are a lot of men nurses out there, and it's thousands, if not millions of them. So give your taste on that, if you would, please, so the youth and some of these other people who are interested in that field would get a better understanding of that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great subject. I love to talk about it in a couple of different ways. One, I'll just touch on that. There are a ton of men in nursing. Nursing is one of those things that I happened into by accident. It wasn't something that I, was like I wanted to be when I was a little kid, but it was something that I became exposed to and became interested in. And I have to say, it's been an extremely rewarding career. It's been very good to me. It's allowed me to do so many different things. And nursing is one of those things that there's so many different paths that you can pursue within nursing, within the clinical environment, within research, within business. There's just so many opportunities. And if there's any young men or women who are interested in talking about that and exploring that as a career, I'm more than happy to talk to anybody about that, because it's just a really fantastic career to be a part of. I will say that my college experience was a little bit different than a lot of people, maybe similar to your own. So I grew up pretty impoverished, and we were very poor. We didn't have any money. My family never talked about college. Wasn't something that we did. So I never thought about going to college. And there's a couple of instances, a couple of stories I'll tell you. And one of them, because they're very related to human connection, which is something that I hope we talk a lot about, because it's something that I'm very passionate about. I think it's the strongest protective factor we have for everything, especially suicide prevention. But so I'll kind of start with that, saying, so I never thought about going to college. And it's it's the interactions we have with people that shape us and guide us, if we're open to that. When I had just graduated high school, and I was always a very good student. I was always quite bright, but not very focused. And so after high school, I really wasn't doing anything. And I was at the high school to pick up a girlfriend of mine that was still in high school, because I was kind of at that age. And I ran into an ex-teacher that I had, history teacher. His name is Mr. Maruzek. I had always enjoyed his class. He taught history, and he saw me up there, and he came up to me and he's like, "What are you doing here?" And I started to explain. He's like, no, why are you here? Why are you not doing something with your life? You need to be doing something with yourself. Right. And at the time, I was really upset with him, because I was like 19 years old. And I was like, who's this guy telling me what I should be doing with my life? It's not my dad. Who is this? Right. And I was very irritated with him. But it was one of those things that kind of just stuck right here and never really went away. And it was kind of a catalyst, I think, as I moved forward in my life. And then I met, someone else while I was in the military. And they were like, you know what? You should probably go to college. And I was like, me? But the seed had already been planted. And so now it was being watered. And so, long story short, I did eventually go to college, of course, and with my GI Bill, which thankfully to the U.S. Army for sponsoring that. But
One of the
just happy to be
benefits
a
of being
part of
in the
that. But
military.
yes, sir.
Yeah.
And Mr. Maruzak, he didn't owe me anything. He did not have to reach out to me. He did not have to say anything. He did not have to waste the 5 minutes that had that conversation took place. He didn't owe me anything, but he did it because he saw a young man that he felt like could contribute to the world, who might do something, and he felt it was his responsibility to be that catalyst. And so, long story short, I meant to congratulate or thank him for many, many years. And then probably a few years ago, I was like, you probably ought to reach out to him because you're getting kind of old. So that means he might be too. So I wrote him a letter and I said, you probably have no idea who I am. I said, but I wanted to let you know what a huge impact you made on my life. And here's all of the things that I've done, and I've been very successful. And I think a lot of that started with you, and which was just a really great thing for me to be able to do, to share that with him. And he wrote back and he said, yeah, I know who you are. I remember you. I went and looked up your grades at the school. He's retired now. He goes, and you were a great student. And I knew you had potential. And that's why I said something to you. And I'm very happy for you, very proud of your success. What a wonderful feeling. And that's the power of human connection. And that's what we can all really share with each other. And it's just really something that I think is something that we all know on some intrinsic level. We've all had those, but we really have an obligation to pay those forward, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Great, fantastic story. I think what you were saying about the human connection part is what I think, maybe some of the young people who are listening in, or even some of the older people who are listening in, may forgetting or maybe took for granted, because I still know pretty much everybody who has made a big impact on my life, from Dave Ellis to my first grade teacher, Miss Dubnik, to even my college counselor, Rhonda Staten. And these are all people at the college level. But just like you, we all have that seed, that people talk about. It's like, well, what are you doing with your life? And I tell people all the time, it was no doubt I was going to the NBA. I had no doubt in my head I was going to go and I was going to be the next, big star. And of course, my dreams were my dream actually came true. It just came true in another way. But in the midst of me trying to figure those things out, just like you, I had people in my life who were always watering that seed and always telling me, get out there, do this, do that. And I became very successful, just like what you said. And here I am now. And it's like, man, and I'm just like you in the sense of I've always kept in contact with the mentors that groomed me and kind of gave me the skills and the knowledge and the wisdom to pursue what I wanted to pursue. Because, I didn't come from much. I'm from Wyandotte County, Kansas. Ain't a whole lot there. My mom and dad had a little bit of money, but they didn't have a whole lot of money. But like you said, it's a story that I think young people need to know. And I think now, and I'm kind of shifting gears because I think now, because of the social media and all of the Facebooking and all of the things that they are being connected with through the computer, we're losing a lot of the human connection part of that. And so let's segue into that. I want to talk about human connection. And let's talk about that in the sense of how can we bring human connection on a more strategic basis in America? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so great point. So the irony, right, is that we're more connected than ever.
Right.
And yet we've really lost a lot of that really strong connection, those bonds that we have with each other, especially young people are really at risk, right?
Right.
Especially considering the pandemic and everything that's going on with that right now. I've been involved in some conversations with some folks out in Las Vegas. As you know, a lot of kids have been out of school for a long time.
Right.
And there's been a lot of stressors, because if I were 10 years old, 15 years old, my friend group, my circle group is extremely important. Sports are extremely important. Being engaged in social peer activities It's had a very strong impact in various pockets of the country, and they've had suicide rates that have doubled in that area. And it's just it's a very unfortunate and avoidable type of loss of human life. And so we talk about that. There's a lot of different factors that play into that, of course. And there's a lot of different things that we can do to kind of combat that and to intervene in those kind of situations. But one of the things that we can talk about is kind of that human connection, right? So
Yeah.
you mentioned, so my studies in suicidology began probably when I was doing some of my graduate work. So when I was involved, actually, go a little far back. So when I had just started my master's program, I lost someone in my life very close to me to suicide. And it was like it is for most people, it was devastating. And it really changed my perspective on the world, changed my understanding of my obligation to other people, and what I needed to do to try to help that. And so I had just started my master's program, and it really shifted my entire focus for my studies. I decided to focus my area of focus and research on suicidology at that point, particularly helping staff like myself be able to understand risks of suicide, to be able to intervene with individuals in crisis. Because at that time, I had done the bulk of my clinical work in the psychiatric setting. I was working inpatient psychiatric for child and adolescent primarily, and I considered myself to be, fairly knowledgeable in behavioral health, but I was not aware of these signs and these symptoms that were being presented to me by someone that was close to me. And, there's a lot of different reasons for that. And you certainly can never blame yourself, especially when there's a lack of understanding. What we can do is we can kind of look at that and go, where are the opportunities, And so as I continued that focus and research through my doctorate program, one of the things that I really fell in love with was the work by Thomas Joyner. And I know that you and I talked a little bit about that. And Thomas Joyner is a researcher out of Florida State University. He's done a tremendous amount of research, and he's written several books about suicide. My personal favorite is his first, which is Why People Die by Suicide. And if you haven't had a chance to read it, I strongly encourage you to read it. It was a very powerful and life-changing book for me. And one of the things that Dr. about is his theory of suicide. And I won't cover it all because I know we don't have a lot of time,
Right.
but there are different factors that happen that put people at risk for suicide. And one of those factors is what we call, hopelessness, which is also that feeling that, there's no hope, there's no reason to live. And a lot of that can be driven by this disconnection, this isolation where people feel alone. And it might just be a perception of feeling alone. You may be surrounded by a family. Maybe you're living with a family of 6 or 7, right? Maybe you have a huge family, but if you don't feel connected to them, then you feel isolated. And this can happen in lots of different scenarios. And we know that there's lots of populations that are at higher risk for having those feelings of isolation. It may be social cultural. Maybe it's someone who's homeless. Maybe it's someone who feels disenfranchised from the general population. But we know that regardless of how it happens, those feelings of isolation, those feelings of disconnection put people at higher risk for suicide. And that's when we can talk about that concept of how can we as other human beings use this power of connection to reach out to them, to protect them, to offer them that extra layer, that hope, by telling them that, hey, you know what, John? You're important to me. I care about you. You are a good person and I value. I want you around.
Right. Yeah, all of those things are perfect. I think that everything that you just said is so much in all of what you just said right there that I don't think people really know the significance or the power of human connection in the way that you just formatted it. And I can only speak for personal experience myself. I got into the whole suicide game is because, I looked at my brother, I looked at my family. My brother, suffered from some mental illnesses. and through the military. And when I seen him struggling, it just kind of was like, man, the last thing I want him to do is to hurt somebody else or himself. And so with his behavior at the time, that's just the road he was going to do. And also too with myself, I went through a relationship divorce, and thoughts was in my head about, well, you can't do anything right, so you might as well just give up on yourself. And I had to quickly like change my mentality, change my perception about life and about how critical and how precious life can be. And some people can do that in a healthy fashion and others can't. And so I was one of the lucky ones who I got help, but also too, I'm a faith guy. I'm a strong Christian. And so I use my spirituality to really kind of help me navigate through some of those hurdles and those thoughts. And man, I'm healed by the grace of God, but man, I mean, it really was a struggle to get out of those mindsets and all of those things from a social or cultural issue. It was a fight. And those things that you mentioned in the sense of how we should be more aware and how we treat people, and knowing that for we take things for granted. Like you mentioned with your friend passing from suicide, you didn't know some of the signs and signals that was happening to that person. And in the same way with me. And so I educated myself. I'm just like you. I wanted to find out more information. And then that's how I got started with the non-for-profit with R2B, with Reasons to Believe. But I want you to really, I guess, expound on the reason, or one of the reasons why you wanted to, why are you going to say you wanted to, but one of the reasons why I wanted you to collaborate with me on a great book for kids called Speaking Life and Hope. Because you mentioned one of the signs is that people think of hopelessness. And hopelessness is a big word, especially nowadays because of COVID and all what's going on. A lot of people are struggling with that one word. I don't have any hope. There is no hope for me. I don't care. Nobody hears me. Nobody understands. But give your, if you can, it could be brief or long or however you want to say it, in regards to this book about how we are giving life and hope back to youth and families through this book. So I'll let
Really
you
great. Um, so first of all, I love the book. I'm biased, right? But it's a fantastic book. It's got a wonderful story. It's a great message of hope in a very, very challenging conversation. And it's very difficult to talk about suicide awareness. It's very difficult to talk about suicide prevention. There is a certain stigma that surrounds behavioral health, mental health, and specifically related to suicide prevention, because it's very scary to talk about. And so it's a hard conversation to have. So when you and I first started having this conversation about possibly having a children's book with that story, and I say children, I want to say, let's say a youth book,
right.
Having a youth-oriented book related to suicide prevention, I was a little bit apprehensive, to be honest with you, because it was like, wow, this is a tough story to tell, and it's going to have to be carefully navigated. And it's still, we want to make sure we really focus on the positive elements. So I will say, for starters, that I'm just a really big fan of the Fred Dexter series, and I love the characters. I love the message. I love the art style, and I think it's something that it's just a great universe full of possibilities for really expressing hope and teaching fantastic lessons. It's a great medium. So that's one of the reasons I was very excited to be a part of it. And then as we started exploring it and starting mocking up ideas and talking about the story and how it could develop, I'm like, this is a really great way to tell this story in a really safe manner, that really emphasizes some of the real key characteristics of what we need to do as other human beings to help each other. And I won't give away the whole story because I want everyone to read it. But one of the things that I love about it is, at the core of the story, you have a couple of really strong elements. One, you have the teacher, Mr. Hudson, right?
Right.
And he provides a couple of different elements. And one is he is a full, caring here in the lives of these kids, that they have an opportunity to see that not only is he interested in mentoring them, but he is also interested in protecting them and helping them. And I think that you can't do that too much nowadays. I think it's really important for young people to understand that adults do want to help them, that we do care, that we want to be there to guide them. And then also, of course, you have the wonderful relationship between the two main characters, right?
Right.
And so you have this friendship, this opportunity of someone, Fred, who is willing to go above and beyond to make sure that he is helping someone that he sees in crisis. And we have an opportunity to see what that looks like in the book, what crisis looks like. We get to see some of these signs and symptoms of someone who might be at risk. And then it's just a wonderful message, full of hope, very positive. It's told very lightly with some comedic elements, but it really focuses on the core message of really connecting with other people and really expressing that hope. And I just think it's a wonderful book. I don't think we could get it into enough hands. I think everyone needs to share it. It's it's an easy read, but very powerful, I think, once you get your hands on it.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And not just because we both wrote the book, but because the message itself really, impacts people, I think, from all ages, sizes, cultures, ethnic backgrounds. I think anyone who reads this book is going to be well informed of some of the simple or maybe even difficult signs of what suicide prevention either looks like or how we should have this conversation with youth in regards to that topic. One of the things that I love about the book is that when I connected with you on writing it, I had this format that I was thinking about. And when I gave it to you, you totally took the format and just like poof, like exploded it out, made it way bigger than what it was. And that all in itself really gave me some knowledge about you as a writer. You are a fantastic writer. And I don't think
Thank
you
you.
really know how good of a writer you are. But I will say this, and I'm not joking. I think we had this conversation before. We will be doing another Fred Dexter book together because I love your thinking and your writing style. And as you know, the Fred Dexter series is something that I will continue, for years and years and years and years. I have a great team who I work with. And then the technology these days of coming up with the art and the illustration is fantastic. So big shout out to my guy, my main man, Ruben Armstrong, who does a great job of the illustration. And big shout out to you, Dr. Leo, for great writing. I know I did a little bit of writing, but man, you really just took a little piece of what I had, and that thing just said, wow. I was like, oh man, this is awesome.
Uh,
So yeah, I strongly want to encourage people to get this book for a lot of different reasons. But I think right now, because of what's going on in America, I think everybody needs to be more aware, more exposed to the do's, the pros and cons of this topic, and how we can let people know about it in a professional and even sometimes in an unprofessional way. I don't care. I don't anything to save a life. I'm gonna do it. Period. I don't want to see anybody take their own life or others. And whatever I can do to help that mission, um, that's what I'm going to do. So if you take a look at each one of the things that I love, and I'm not going to share the book, Dr. Leo, but one of the things that we did on the very back, every Fred Dexter book has what we like to call Fred's Facts. Um, and in Fred's Facts, he really expounds on some very difficult wording about the book in the particular pages or on the particular pages. So I want to encourage the parents when you see or get the book, make sure you have the Fred's Facts and talk about the Fred's Facts with your kids. And I think you're going to be even more informed about those because those little um, I guess those little nuggets, if I could say that, really can hold a lot of big significance and giving people more education and informing people on that. So big ups to that. All right, so now that we got Fred Dexter out the way, we talked a little bit about your beginning. We talked a little bit about your education. We talked a little bit about your background. I want to know what is the future looking like for you in a sense of what you got going on. Tell more people about Hold Fast and about that organization, and how can people get connected with that whole fantastic group of people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Um, so uh, my my organization is Hold Fast Together, and I'm sure you can post links when you post this, wherever you share this. But it's holdfasttogether.com. And essentially, it's just a platform to be able to reach out to me about any trainings that you might be interested in. I've had a wonderful opportunity through my practice to be able to participate in a lot of clinical trainings, specifically for suicide prevention. I've done a lot with that, within the local area, with some of the law enforcement, with some of the academic organizations, some of the clinical organizations. And then, of course, there's some, if you're familiar with motivational interviewing, I've had some experience with that as well, which I'm just a gigantic fan with. And then I started, I have a trademarked training called Do the Thing to Get the Thing.
Ah,
And I don't think we've had a chance to talk about it. It's kind of a fun little concept. I think we might have a book opportunity there. But
is this the one? I don't mean to cut you off. Is this the one where
no, no.
it was a book idea? You was like, well, the kids, if they see something and how they got to where they got, is some things that they had to do to get to that.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, talk about that, because yes, we want to write another book. I love that concept, and I'm all in, my friend, on that.
Awesome. So as through the years, professionally, I've had a lot of opportunity to be mentored, um, and I've had an opportunity to mentor other people. And one of the things that I've noticed is that sometimes there's a lot of disconnect people have between what they want and how they get there. And I think that some of us are really fortunate to understand those connections right away. Some people are very fortunate to have people show those and then those connections. And then some people, they just don't make those connections. So a lot of people see that, that analogy, right? The one where you see the tip of the iceberg and that's the success, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
you don't see everything underneath. So you don't understand what it takes to get there. Well, you can't jump levels. It doesn't work that way. You've got to do the thing to get the thing, which is an oversimplification, but it's a fun little tagline, which basically means there's a pathway to success. There's a way to get from where you are now to where you want to be. But there is a path and you need to follow it. And there's steps that you need to take to build that. And really, it's not helpful to go alone. We're all in this together, right? And if you can find mentors to help guide you along that path, to hit some of those landmarks, to be able to carve out where you need to go, to not get derailed and go down the wrong path, to continue to stay on the path, even if you can't see the summit, to be able to keep moving forward. And that's just kind of a sneak peek of what do the thing
Right.
to get the thing.
I love it, man. I love it. I can't wait to write it, because we're gonna be starting on that, if not this spring, hopefully this summer, to kind of get that going. For those who don't know, because of COVID, I just finished a book called Wear a Mask. So the Fred Dexter series is totally. I'm almost done with it, Doctor Leo. We're on the final stages of that, and it's been quite a journey, as you already know. But I've got a book about wearing your mask and about social distancing. What is a pandemic? How can we safeguard ourselves and others? Why should we wear our masks? That kind of thing. So that should be out here hopefully within the next month or two. And I was going to start on another Fred Dexter series about, or excuse me, Fred Dexter book about being a African American father, and I'm gonna do that. But I think this one, that one you to do the thing to get the thing, I think that one needs to be. I think we need to roll with that one here pretty quick, because I can see, you know, sparks and flames and everything going out with kids wanting to see that. I think that's going to be really, really cool. So yeah, so and this is what I love about your thought patterns, and you think a lot like me. You're one of those individuals who think like, well, what can I do to help young people or kids, per se, start thinking about their purpose in their plan and how they could do something now that will propel them, or to uh, give them an example to start thinking about their future. And that's one of the things about you that I just love, as a person who loves to give back to the youth and loves to say, hey, I know what you're seeing right now, but do you see the big picture on why we do what we are doing? There's a big picture about this. And I think that's what our mentors were really helping us to see, that, yo, you can start somewhere, you can look at it, but do you see the big picture on why that you need to do it, or the significance of why you need to do it? So great stuff, man. Great stuff. And I'm serious. We're gonna get started on uh do the thing to get the thing. I'm telling you, get the thing, do the thing. I can't think of it now, but yeah, we're gonna start on that soon. So as we close, and then follow up too with Hold Fast. Great organization. And anybody who wants to know about that, you guys can feel free to go to holdfast.com, and you will see Dr. Leo and all of what he's done with that organization. And, you know, it's called holdfasttogether.com. So if you want, I'll put a link inside the podcast also too, when I edit this, to let people know where they can find you and be more interested, if they're interested, about how they can get in contact with you and to help with the mission and the purpose of what you got going on. All right.
Absolutely. If you're interested in reaching out to me for trainings, or for consultation, or if you just want to ask some questions about suicide prevention or anything in general, just contact me through the email at Hold Fast Together. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. So please reach out. Before we wrap, though, John, I would like to share story and some resources, if that's okay with you.
Yes, please. Go right ahead.
Perfect. All right. So we've been talking a lot about human connection, right?
Yes.
And you probably know the story already, because I probably already shared it with you, John. But this is one of my favorite stories about human connection and suicide prevention. And I apologize greatly to not crediting it to the original individual, but for the life of me, I cannot find the story again to save my life. So I apologize. Okay. But here's kind of a story that I like to talk about in my trainings, to really emphasize the power of human connection. So there's a gentleman who's having kind of a bad day. Not for whatever's going on in his life, things aren't going so great that day. He goes into a restaurant. He goes in there to order some food, and the waitress comes to take his order. Well, she's kind of crabby too. She's apparently not having a good day either. And so he is not normally a crabby guy, but he's a little crabby that day. So they have a little bit of conflict, and it's not like him to do that. So he feels bad about it. So when the waitress comes back to the table, he's like, hey, I'm so sorry. That's not like me at all. I don't really lash out at people. I really apologize. I'm just having a bad day. My dog got out this morning. I had to chase him through the mud. It was just awful. And I've just been in a bad mood. It has nothing to do with you. You're doing a great job here. Thank you so much for your time. And she's like, oh, don't worry about it. No, it's no problem, right? Mm-hmm. That's it. Like a month later, he gets an envelope in the mail, and he doesn't recognize who it's from. And he opens it up, and there's something in it. And so he pulls it out, and it's a bullet. And he's immediately alarmed, of course, because that's a very strange thing to get in the mail. But then he pulls out the letter, and it's from the waitress. Mm. And it says, hey, you don't know me, and I'm so sorry for looking you up and finding your address. She goes, but I met you at the restaurant, and you came in and you were having a bad day, and we kind of had a little tiff, and then you apologized, and you were so kind to me. And she goes, what you didn't know is the reason why I was having a bad day is because I had been going through some severe depression. And I decided that day I was going to take my life. Mm. And this is the bullet that I was going to use. But I don't know why, but because you were kind, because you took that time to reaffirm with me, it just, something happened. It was a little spark, and it kind of changed my perspective, and it kind of disrupted how I was thinking. And I decided not to go through with it. And I called my friend, and we talked a lot about it. And now I feel better, and I'm getting the kind of help that I need. And I'm so sorry for bothering you. I just wanted to share with you how powerful it was that you took this time out of your day to say something nice to me.
Mm.
And every time I tell that story, just chills, because it's so powerful. It's a real story. And it's just amazing, because so many times throughout our day, we have an opportunity to be kind. And I'm not even talking about, doing something like a serious suicidal intervention. I'm just talking about being kind to other people, taking that moment to stop and to do that extra little thing that maybe they need, that may change the course of their life forever. And I think we have an obligation to try to do that as much as possible. And whether it has a dramatic impact like that, maybe a young man goes to college, maybe somebody's kinder to their kids when they get home, who knows? But we have an obligation, I think, to do that, to connect with other people.
I strongly agree. Great story. It sends chills up my spine even hearing that. So I just want to let you know, I was like, man, this guy is telling a story. I'm over here like, oh my God, I need a tissue almost. But yeah, Dr. Leo, I mean, well said. I mean, I can't even go, well said. We don't know what people are going.
So we don't. So let me wrap up with a couple of resources.
Yep.
So if you haven't read this book, Why People Die by Suicide by Dr. Thomas Joyner, please, please, please read it. If you are interested in suicide awareness and suicide prevention, it's on Amazon. It's a very easy read. It's not very clinical in nature. It's very powerful. It tells a lot about Dr. Joyner's own experiences with the loss of his father and the research he does, and it just really hits home. I really recommend it. Another thing that I also recommend is there is a 1 hour documentary. I guess you call it documentary. It was a play, but it was filmed by HBO, and they made it a 1 hour show. I know you can find it on HBO. I'm not sure. You can probably find it on video on demand as well. It's called Every Brilliant Thing. And it is about a man growing up with a mother with severe behavioral health issues who eventually takes her own life. And it's him struggling with growing up that way, and then him growing up struggling with that loss and his own behavioral health issues. But most importantly, it's really about hope. And the title, Every Brilliant Thing, is what he used to make lists for her every day. That's what he would call his brilliant things, of the reasons why she should live. And it's just one of my favorite things I've ever seen. It's extremely powerful, full of hope. I really recommend it. And then the last thing I would recommend is if you're interested in suicide awareness and prevention, take a training. It could be one of my trainings. I would love to do a training for any group that's interested in it. But there are also other fantastic organizations out there that do suicide prevention trainings. And if you have any questions about those, please be in touch with myself or John, and we can definitely help you connect to those resources. Because we all have an obligation to take care of each other, and it's really hard to do that without tools.
Love it, man. Good stuff. Good stuff. I'm glad you gave us all those resources, because people need extra support where needed. And like we mentioned earlier, we don't know who's listening and who would need this information. So this is great information. So thank you for sharing that. I really, really appreciate it. Well, as I go, I do want to say once again, thank you so much, Dr. Leo, for your time. Thank you so much for your service. And I'm learning even more from you as we get to know each other even further. So I'm just grateful that I know you, and that I too am a product of one of your trainings. When I mean to tell you, my podcasters, my followers out there, when this guy knows his stuff, he knows his stuff, and he's very, very thorough, but also too, he's very educated on this topic. And to me, he brings it in a way that will not only make you think, but it'll spark you to cause positive change for somebody who really needs this information. So once again, thanks a lot. So as I close, let's see. Normally I like to play a game. Normally I always play a game, but I'm trying to think how I'm going to do this because I'll just do it this way on my way out. Let's see who, and this is, I love sitcoms. Anybody who knows me, they know I love sitcoms. All right. So before Twitter, Instagram, and all of the streaming services, there were sitcoms out there. So you're a little older than me, not by that much, but I mean, we know about the 80s and 90s. If you can tell me what was one of your favorite sitcoms growing up as a kid, yeah, tell me what was one of your favorite sitcoms growing up as a kid.
Okay, so I have to come clean on this. I actually posted on Facebook so everyone knows. I'm a little embarrassed, but I love Frasier. It's one of my favorite shows.
Oh man, that's nice. Okay. And Frasier, I did watch Frasier because he was from what I know, he was a counselor, right? Wasn't he a counselor or a doctor?
He was a psychiatrist.
He's a psychiatrist, kind of like you. The one thing that I liked about Frasier was the dog. He had a dog on it, and I don't remember what the dog's name was, but
Eddie.
It was, what was it called?
Eddie.
Eddie, yes. So Eddie will always have these little quirks and these things that he would do, anytime Frasier would say something to do something. So the reason why I'm saying this, Dr. Leo, is because normally, culturally, sitcoms is one way that we used to sit down and relax and watch and be at a place where we can be calm, cool, and collective. And I'm pretty sure, like anybody of the millions of viewers, Frasier was probably one of those shows where when you watched it, you was like, man, I can't wait to the next episode to see what's going to happen next. So I want to encourage people. Sometimes you can take a look back at some of your own or old episodes, whether it be a sitcom or old TV show, and you maybe can find some healing in laughter. And that's one of the things that I'm a strong believer in. I love to laugh and I love to make people laugh. People call me a comedian all the time, but Frasier was one of those shows. Oh my God. His comedy was a thinking. You had to think about the laugh and how he presented. Because most, and I'm just speaking for me, I don't know this for verbatim, but most African Americans wouldn't watch necessarily Frasier for say. I would. I know I would.
Probably not.
Anytime I know about the dog, so I'm telling you right now, I was a fan of Frasier. But I tell people all the time, my favorite sitcom was Martin. And Martin, at that time clicked in the 90s for Black men, Black America, and how Black culture was for us at that time around. So I want to encourage everybody to make sure that you live, make sure that you laugh, and make sure that you love. And then also too, Dr. Leo, thank you for mentioning about the word hope today, because it is something that people are taking for granted, and they don't know that there is hope out there, and that there are people like yourself who want to give hope to the hopeless. So thank you so much for your
thank you for having me, John. I really appreciated it. And yes, you're right. If there's anybody out there that's not sure that anyone cares, I care. John cares. We all think you're really important. We all think you matter.
You got it, man. Well, listen, everybody. Dr. Leo, stay on. But to everybody out there, go to johnwhudson.org if you want to catch me the next time around. Of course, we're doing big things. I got some things coming up with our next podcast. I don't want to tell you who it is, but this is season 2. Stay focused, stay driven. God bless you. We'll see you soon. Peace. Stay on, Dr. Leo.